I think we can all recognize the times changing in regards to how we consume information, regardless of how truthful that information might be. Unless we disconnect entirely from technology, it's almost inevitable that certain things will be shoved into our eyeballs whether we like it or not. So gather round, people, wherever you roam, and allow me to try and assist you in determining what is and is not true. Considering the people who are supposed to be in charge of that for you have failed you miserably, and the facts are constantly in dispute as well as opinion. When the facts can't even be agreed upon, there's no base objective measure for anything, and reality can be just as malleable as opinion when it's convenient for people who have an agenda to push. It's one thing to say that someone misrepresented your opinions. It's quite another to say that reality is misrepresenting your opinions, if you catch my drift. I recently finished an essay titled Lying by Sam Harris, and it details why lying is nearly never advantageous from a moral standpoint. It was interesting, but I'm not steeped in the morality discussion enough to say anything smart about those points. However, I was very interested in the various causes and effects of lying that he laid out, and tried to fashion those individual models onto an entire nation. Let's just say I was horrified at the result. Individual people are not capable of examining the entire world and coming to a conclusion about everything that happens, which is why they desire a trustworthy service, journalism, to give them the facts so they can use that time to form opinions as opposed to verifying those facts, because, journalists should be verifying them for you. But when you essentially give people power over people's perceptions of reality, they will pretty much always abuse that power for political expediency. While a lot of my time on this channel is dedicated to my opinions and responses to other opinions, I have the most fun when I task myself with some detective work in order to figure out what's true about a given situation. There are some things that I'm simply incapable of examining due to the fact that they happened approximately 1,000 miles away from me, and access to the internet is all I have going for me. But sometimes it does end up working out. Lots of people come to me with questions like, where do you get your news? Where are the objective news sources? And these just smack of people who simply do not know how to do said detective work. No offense to them. I simply cannot delineate a foolproof step-by-step playbook to you due to situations being so varied and the sheer difficulty in articulating this process. But I can give you a basic plan that will, if not lead you to the truth, at least make it more likely that you will interpret reality correctly. So without much more useless introduction from me, allow me to teach you how to determine what is or isn't true yourselves so you don't have to rely on journalists, or even me for that matter, in order to figure out what's going on in the world. Step 1. Throw off preconceptions. All of these steps are going to be difficult when one is so used to nonsense being thrown in their face, and presentation of the actual facts being under such dismissive scrutiny online and in other various mediums. Criticism travels as fast as data does in this day and age, so regardless of what you say, there will be people claiming you have been duped. But trusting your own judgment is something that you simply must be able to do. There are people out there who trust no judgment above their own, and there are people who trust everyone's judgment above their own. You must not become either of these people, and you must be satisfied with conclusions you have come to after you've examined things, or else you are at the mercy of anyone who displays any sort of authority about any issue ever in history. What do I mean by throwing off preconceptions in the first place? Well, it means separating your past experiences, allegiances, what you expect to take place, political alliances, and various other hindrances of the mind when investigating an issue. Those are all examples of preconceptions that can color your interpretation of the reality that you experience. For example, imagine you hear a few loud bangs outside of the window. They startle you, but then you remember that it's July 4th. And for those not in the US, that's Independence Day here, and fireworks are traditionally set off in celebration. Yet the next morning, you see police cruisers surrounding the neighbor's house and discover that someone was actually murdered in that house last night via gunfire. I wouldn't fault this particular person for having that preconception. It's one of the most reasonable preconceptions to have. But in that scenario, you can see how their assumption that the sounds were fireworks due to it being the 4th of July led them to the wrong conclusion about reality, and that conclusion can have bad consequences. This person could have called the police sooner if they reacted as if they were gunshots. However, if this person merely assumed that they were gunshots, they may have called the police frantically over mere fireworks and wasted their time that could have been spent thwarting actual criminals. The reason I think it's important that I attempt to facilitate more fact-oriented discussion is because people are spinning their preconceptions into being fact when they should not be. And those have consequences of a much greater caliber than the above example. Imagine deciding on who to put in charge of your country based on faulty information, because that's what's happening at present. Yet, we see preconceptions like these everywhere. I don't think that it's a gigantic stretch to say that people who already have an innate distrust of the government are more likely to believe that the planes on 9/11 were holograms. That's not a slam against people who distrust the government. I distrust it in general, but I can recognize that this attitude of mine colors my interpretation of things sometimes, and so I account for it when I'm trying to get a handle on reality. I'm trying to eliminate as many assumptions as possible and get to the heart of the matter as efficiently as I possibly can, which is what people should be doing for themselves now that journalism is a whirlpool of speculation, hyperbole, spin, hysteria, dismissal, and opinion-based programming. Part of the reason these programs being popular, however, is the simple fact that people enjoy conflict and having their preconceptions verified. If people weren't watching these programs, they wouldn't be getting those ratings. Okay, if people wanted calm and rational discourse, the calm and rational discourse-based programming would be a gold mine of an untapped market, except that it isn't at this point in time. So in regards to seeing these preconceptions everywhere, we see it on Fox News discussing the Obama administration, as well as MSNBC and CNN when they're discussing the Obama administration. If your preconception or expectation was that Obama was or is going to be a good president, you will focus on the positive aspects of the presidency and brush away the bad stuff, and vice versa. This is just a different way of explaining confirmation bias, but it's one thing to be aware that confirmation bias is a thing. It's another to know processes by which to nullify it, or at least counter it when you're trying to come to the truth. It's these types of things that need to be articulated so people have a roadmap to follow when coming to the truth, and so I'll deliver what I usually do. Let's say I'm investigating a claim made. I'll deliver another example just so these things don't get too abstract and it'll be easier to follow. The claim is, Bob killed Jim, and Jim's body is lying there on the ground, dead. Even simply hearing that claim will reroute the evidence to be collected in your mind as somehow being connected to Bob, even when it may not be. It's key that you ignore all claims until you've examined the evidence for yourself. Even entertaining the idea that the claim Bob killed Jim is anything more than a possibility in your mind will distort the evidence into pointing in that direction. Unless you're a friend of Bob's, then it's possible you'd want to defend him, and that would sway your interpretation in a different direction. What I do is completely abandon wide context and focus exclusively on the issue at hand. I try to focus on what actually happened regardless of anyone's opinion, because an opinion based on assumption as opposed to fact is just as valuable as a lack of opinion, at least in my eyes. So you want to abandon who's telling you what about this and who did why, how, when all of that can be figured out by simply looking at what is in front of you and reporting it back to yourself accurately. I think that selectively contextualizing things in order to not allow one thing to distort another, not in a dishonest fashion, is one of the only ways to be objective about anything. Some people try to factor in nearly everything in their life in the world into a determination about the truth, and so they never actually get there, while others gather one fact, or merely one argument, and then jump to the nearest, most convenient conclusion that their preconceptions would allow for. Both of these actions are dire mistakes. I can't even express with words how to deal with someone who sees something, has the ability and time to examine it, and yet is completely incapable of relaying that information accurately, either due to ideological inconvenience or an actual disorder of some type, but alas, I repeat myself. And just a quick point, if you are hoping for a particular conclusion to present itself to you at the end of your investigations into a particular issue, you're doing it entirely wrong. You need to know when context matters and when it doesn't. Diverting to irrelevant but similar sounding things in the face of a fact is a sign that you have not followed this first step. If I'm trying to determine whether Bob killed Jim, how Janet, someone unknown to Bob and Jim, who lives in 3 states over, is doing on her exercise routine is wholly irrelevant. However, the whereabouts of everyone well known to Jim at the time of the murder is completely relevant information, and this leads me gracefully into Step 2. Know what the fuck you're talking about. Seems pretty obvious, right? Well, not to many. I see many a person who will spout off about a topic that they have absolutely no knowledge of, and yet purport to know something of value about that particular topic. This is connected to a basic rule in life, which is know when to shut your fucking mouth, and this rule is obeyed by nearly 0 people. And that is connected to another basic rule in life, which is try not to be a fucking idiot in public, which is similarly disobeyed by lots of people, usually without even realizing it. This usually occurs when someone has a poorly constructed fact-opinion pyramid collapsing in their brains when they are attempting to talk sensibly. Allow me to describe to you what this fact-opinion pyramid is, because it's the best analogy I've come up with for this concept. We're all aware that opinions are not facts. Well, what are facts in the first place? Facts are things that are true regardless of someone's view about that thing. For example, it is a fact that I'm currently wearing a watch. No amount of opinion about whether I'm wearing a watch or not will change this fact. It doesn't matter how you feel about the fact that I'm wearing it. It doesn't matter if you say, well, how do we even define watch? What do you consider wearing something? Because that doesn't align with my opinion about what constitutes the wearing of something. Blah, 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 blah. Check out my philosophy degree and dictionary. No, the fact remains. However, you can have opinions about my wearing a watch, which is built off of the fact that I'm wearing it. Facts are the base of the pyramid, and opinions are built above it. For example, someone can have the opinion that wearing a watch makes me look like a douchebag, while someone else thinks it doesn't make me look like a douchebag. Both of those opinions are built off of the fact that I'm wearing one. If I weren't wearing one, this discussion wouldn't have taken place, most likely. That's the simplest example I could come up with, but these things do get more complex in the realm of politics and stuff like that. When one's talking about an issue, both people in the discussion can completely accept the facts of the situation and yet still come out with different opinions on said topic. You can't scream, "You just refuse to accept the facts," when someone has accepted the facts, but builds a different opinion off of those facts. The problem I see arising is that people are starting to treat facts like they're just somebody's opinion, and treating opinions like they are the steadfast facts. Stop this shit immediately. What many people don't seem to realize is that most disagreements should stem from abstract concepts like, do you think X is a problem that needs fixing? Or how should we go about solving X? Or is X of any value? But recently, the most disputed things about any given situation are the facts, considering how trigger-happy people are in delivering false information about something to either support their narrative or pollute opposing ones. But Vernaculis, you pompous jackass, how does one get the facts in the first place? An excellent question. You want to find primary sources for things. By primary source, I mean something directly from the situation you're investigating. Videos, photos, audio recordings, documents, and things of that nature. What you should not be doing is simply reading a news article and then prancing into the world thinking you know everything about that scenario. You should be clicking on the links that news sources provide to you in order to find these primary sources. And if you can't find those primary sources, what they're saying should be doubted. And it is in this step where having a decent general knowledge base is a good thing. If you're interested in diving into a debate about a topic, you should have educated yourself about that topic before you decide to claim that everything you say about it is truth. This isn't my saying, educate yourself, shitlord, when asked a genuine question. This is my saying, before you try to act like you know something, it's very important that you actually know that thing. Plus, Having a base knowledge about lots of different subjects will allow you to identify when someone's saying something blatantly false about that particular topic. I hang around a lot of biomedical engineering majors, and so when they discuss complexities within this field, I have no idea what the fuck they're talking about. They could be saying the truth, meaningless strings of words, or flat out lies for all I know, which is why, if I were inclined to figure out if they're telling the truth, I would need to dive into the subject and actually learn things about said subject. Now, before you run out there with your notepad in hand, pen in ear, and brain perked up to be your own independent truth finder, I have one more quick lesson. Step 3. Have every possible fact you can before drawing conclusions. That's honestly it. Seriously, I don't know how to make it simpler. Explaining it at length would just be fluff at this point. So yes, let's recap. Throw off your preconceptions, build a proper fact-opinion pyramid that won't collapse due to missing facts or the confusion between fact and opinion, find primary sources and analyze every possible fact you can before making a determination. Now get out there and have fun. Have a wonderful day.